Welcome to the Victory in Reseda quarterly podcast and report. This is episode 10, covering spring of 2025. I'm George Torline.
And I'm Randy Stern.
And on this episode, we'll be talking about the vehicles that we worked with in the last quarter or so. Also, we'll be talking to Robbi Correll, who will be a guest on our show. And we'll check in with our vehicle fleet. There's been some interesting updates with those. But first, it's that time of year where we do the Mama Spring Rally.
Yes.
Randy, talk about the rally.
Well, I'll tell you what, I have lost count on how many rallies I've attended on my own. But for us, George and I, this is our third together as Victory in Reseda. Now, what is a Mama Spring Rally? Well, the Midwest Automotive Association, which we are members of, every year a media engagement event at Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, where we all go to the track and try out some of the latest and greatest vehicles, and not just the track, but the countryside around it. We also have an off-road course where we take the more capable vehicles out. And this year it was muddy and it was wet. So you could tell that we've really put these vehicles to the test. Now, day 2, we have autocross on the karting course. And we still have street drives as well as what they call driving out in the countryside. So we were 80 vehicles this year, I believe.
Yeah, and it is a good mix between completely internal combustion, hybrid, and fully electric, both cars and SUVs and trucks.
Oh, yeah, it's a wide swath and from plenty of manufacturers, including at least one startup.
Yes, unexpected to see them.
One of the things that showed up at the Mama Spring Rally this year was something that I was really interested in, and it is from Scout Motors. And they brought the Traveler concept for us to take a look at. Now, we can't drive it because it's only a concept. So, what's Scout Motors? Well, Scout Motors is going to be an independently run entity within Volkswagen Group. So you can tell right off the bat that this is not just any startup. This is a company backed by the resources of Volkswagen Group, but will have their own production facility outside of Columbia, South Carolina, and will be producing 2 lines of vehicles, the Traveler and the Terra. Now, if the name Scout is familiar to you, it was a product of International Harvester, the SUV that they sold from 1961 to about 1980. So they're resurrecting this into an electric SUV.
So how did Volkswagen get a hold of that name?
Intellectual property rights. Because back, I don't quote me on when this happened, but Volkswagen invested into Navistar, which was the company that used to be known as International Harvester, specifically the trucks and the SUV line. And when we talk trucks, we're talking the big rigs as well. The big rig business kept on after they stopped making light-duty pickup trucks and SUVs in 1980. Volkswagen came in to invest in Navistar. They also bought the intellectual properties. So when it came to a project like this, Volkswagen had access to that intellectual properties, including design, which translated into this beautiful, and perspective, keep that in mind, it's a beautiful SUV. The Traveler is now a 4-door instead of a 2-door, as in back in the day, but the design looked very familiar as it picked up where it left off.
I agree. It had many of the design elements that were characteristic of those Scout vehicles back in the day, and with a modern touch and modern flair. And there's a lot of design intent that went into it, as we saw a presentation from one of the designers of that vehicle during the rally.
And we also talked to one of the designers as well to get some inspiration. And it really just aligned with everything I thought of when I first saw the renderings, the photos, and actually the video from the unveiling event they had near Nashville late last year. But having that right there for us to take a look at, to ask questions about, to think of the possibilities when this thing goes into production and for sale. And we're talking about maybe a year or so down the line right now. This looks so production ready. That's why people are throwing their money at them, especially when they're getting the reservations. And you can still reserve, go to scoutmotors.com to do so. But I'll tell you what, seeing this and seeing what could possibly be the final production version, it's exciting.
Yeah, and what's cool is, in speaking with representatives, is that when they come up with design changes to that concept, they apply it to those vehicles so it reflects their current design thinking. So it's kind of the current mode of thought of what we can expect. And it may still evolve slightly, but it sounds like it's pretty far along.
I believe so. I mean, it does look like it's very far along. I mean, we're talking maybe they could just flip the switch as soon as the production facility is completely finished and built out. They can just flip the switch, get it down the line, get it to customers. But first things first, they want to show what this thing looks like. And spot on. Now, there's another thing that I kind of mentioned, but I should mention more about. There's going to be basically two drive lines to this thing. Battery electric, of course, and you could speculate where some of the components will be coming from. However, there's an extended range EV option available, and they're calling those harvesters, hence the intellectual property. But so I'm curious about how the harvester is going to be set up, what kind of gasoline engine or generator will power this system, and will this be, say, generations beyond what GM developed for the Chevrolet Volt, if you remember that?
Yeah, and plus, will it be just like an electricity generator, kind of like how the extended range i3 BMWs had and that kind of thing? So, yeah, the driveline is going to be fascinating to see how that evolves. And I apologize for our listeners on the podcast that we're probably showing some B-roll of the footage that we took. So if you'd like to see that, certainly hop on over to YouTube to watch this podcast to catch our B-roll of that.
Not just that, but also, don't we have a video coming out of our walkthrough, or walk around of the Scout?
Yes, that is in production, pending how well the audio came through, because on that day they were running the track for very noisy race cars, which interfered with our audio. So we're going to put some noise cancellation technology to the test on that one. So we'll see how that comes out.
Noisy race cars. Yeah.
Well, there's a time and place for that.
I know. But you're at Road America. You're at one of the best racing venues in the United States. Come on.
True.
But just a little overview. The timeline is they're targeting production for next year, 2026. The vehicles will be starting as a 2027 model year. So, like I said, if you're ready to reserve, gave you the website. Hopefully this reality will be your reality. It's going to be, I really enjoyed seeing that.
Me too. It looks so cool.
Yes, indeed. Now, another vehicle that just all of a sudden showed up at our event is the four-door version of the new generation Dodge Charger. So this is a 2026 model year edition. It's still the electric. So it's called the Daytona Scat Pack. It's in the track package, which meant it's a little bit more hardcore for what it is. But this is the first time anyone has seen the four-door version of the Dodge Charger in the flesh. Now, one of us actually ended up driving it.
And that would be you.
Why not? Because who's the Moparian of the crew? Me.
That would be you.
Thank you. Let's put it this way. It was better than I expected. Because everyone was saying, I don't want an electric Dodge Charger because it's an affront to Moparians. It's an affront to its heritage. Why should we get an electric vehicle? And that's why they've been languishing at dealerships, because nobody wants to buy a two-door that looks like a two-door Charger, but powered by batteries and electric motors. No, that's why there's a flip side to this whole thing. But let me just say this. As a four-door, this works better.
I agree. The design completely makes sense because in the two-door, you've got all that mass of vehicle still behind the door, which looked a little bit off balance to me. And so, yeah, it was asking, hey, I need a door there. So in a four-door, it makes much more sense.
Now, I know the classic Moparians will come after us and say, Charger was never meant to be a four-door. Well, anyway, that problem was resolved with the first generation LX models in 2005. So this has been our reality since they reintroduced the Charger at that time. However, again, a few surprises. First of all, how it drove. Now, aside from the exhaust noise, which is just, it's wrong. It sounds wrong. But if you ignore that, it's a great vehicle to drive. Cornering is flat out. The performance is spot on. I was surprised by how good the cabin is. Yes, the pistol grip shifter is it's a novelty thing, but I happen to enjoy it. I happen to enjoy everything about this vehicle. And of course, unlike some electric cars, you do have instrumentation in front of you.
Yeah, and I rode along with you on that drive and was watching you enjoy it. You really enjoyed that vehicle. And I think it'll be kind of an interesting reception by the classic Moparians because you've got classic elements like that pistol grip shifter, but you do have modern touches. The illumination in the doors look cool, and just the way the dash layout was very modern. It's kind of a give and take between a modern take on a classic design.
And also, there's still some few twists. It's the first time I've actually tried out the hatchback. Chargers have never been hatchbacks, except maybe for that one time when they renamed the Omni 024 as one.
Yes.
Yeah, back in the 80s. But the hatchback it looked pretty good because it fit the rollator perfectly.
And you never could tell it was a hatch. It didn't look like a hatch.
Exactly. It looks like maybe a 1968 Charger. Nope. Open up the hatchback and it's got some room. It's got some room to it. It's a very shallow floor, but it's okay. However, the Moparians are waiting very patiently for the internal combustion version of these cars. Bottom line is, they look great, all right? They look heritage. They look fantastic, but it needs an internal combustion engine, whether it is a Hurricane inline 6 with 2 turbochargers or a real honest-to-God Hemi V8. It's coming. They said it's coming, but for some fans, not soon enough. However, will the four-door actually help sales of the Charger, period?
I think so.
It better.
It looks better.
They better. Because I'll give you a good example. I recently talked to someone at a car meet last month, and the guy ended up buying one of the two-door Charger Daytonas. He worked at that dealership. So they were given deep discounts for these vehicles. And it's sad because, you would think brand new Dodge Charger, the Moparians will come running, but as soon as they see what's underneath the body, they walked away.
Yeah, that was a tough switch for that audience because, they're expecting internal combustion.
Exactly. We hate beating this over a dead horse, but that's the reality we've been dealing with when it comes to Stellantis. And since there's a new CEO coming in, one would hope that maybe there might be some turnarounds going on there.
Well, it sounds like they're making adjustments to accommodate the internal combustion crowd. So
absolutely. Okay. All right, George. You did it all, by the way, at Mama Spring Rally. Did much more than I did.
Well, in the years past, I was so focused on getting content on vehicles that, on the street drives and some track drives, I didn't get really much of an opportunity to experience some of the other opportunities like autocross and the off-road courses. But autocross, you also did autocross with me.
I was hesitating for a little bit, but I figured, why not, right? And the thing is, you drove more vehicles than I did on the autocross course. So, however, I will say that I'm pretty rusty. I mean, we're on the karting course, which is a very tight course. So you have to be on the apexes all of the time, and they will come at you real quick. Now, up at top of the course, it's an uphill, and you have to get in on the apex, or else you'll find yourself 2 wheels, 4 wheels off. Well, guess who almost got 4 wheels off?
You.
Yes. Oof. Because I missed the apex. I wasn't paying attention because it's a blind hill.
Yeah, you got some elevation switches that can throw you for a loop on that.
Yeah. So I'm not making race car excuses. All I'm saying was I was very rusty out there. And I drove a few of the vehicles that reminded me that, yes, you are very rusty.
So for the choice of vehicles, it was pretty much for the grouping that we were in. We could pretty much all just jump from vehicle to vehicle to vehicle without much waiting. So we had choices of the Volkswagen Golf R 8.5. We had the GTI, so you can compare those back to back, which was fascinating. You had the Fiat 500e electric. We had the Mini Cooper Hardtop John Cooper Works. We had, help me out, Randy, we had more than that.
Let me talk about the vehicles that shouldn't have belonged there. Ford Explorer ST, Maverick Lobo. Seriously? And guess who jumped into the Maverick Lobo? I think both of us did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can confirm that wrong vehicle for that thing.
And the Mustang Mach-E.
Oh, God. If you really want to do drifting instead of going on the autocross, that's the car to get in.
Someone did some amazing drifting on that course with the Mach-E on that. Just amazing job with that. But the challenge is that because it's a kart course, it wasn't meant for these large full-size vehicles. So you've got a scale issue that when you finally get a little bit of straights, some of the vehicles will take advantage of that very quickly. Others, they take some time to spool up. But what was interesting, I found, is I think the best time was done in the Golf R, wasn't it?
Absolutely, because it was perfect for that course. The 4Motion, the uprated performance, I think it's up into 320 something horsepower. It was the perfect car. It was the perfect size, perfect drive line, everything. But also, they have the Toyota GR Corolla.
That's right.
Yep, which is the match for the Golf R, really.
Fairly close in class of vehicle, but different in its powertrain.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, looking at it, I was like, should I drive it? I'll pass. I mean, I got into the GTI and I said, that's the best I can do.
Next year.
We'll see. We shall see.
So of all the vehicles that we drove, what were some of your favorites?
Well, and we're going to talk about every type of driving experience on top of that. Right off the top of my list, the 2025 Lucid Air Pure.
Nice.
Now, it's a single motor version of the Lucid Air lineup. It's the lowest price version of it. And all I could say is you really don't need the dual motor because the Pure alone, it's got packing a lot of performance. It has a great ride, a great cabin. I really appreciate having instrumentation in front of me, having the infotainment just right off to the right. And also they have this control panel touchscreen that's below, which actually retracts, exposes more stowage, which is fine. But I would rather have that screen because it controls most of the vehicle.
And being that it can retract and give you some stowage is nice because a similar vehicle, the Audi Q7, has a similar screen but does not retract.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's added practicality is always a good thing. And I did not know this, but the Lucid Air has a massive trunk.
Yes.
22 cubic feet, which means I was afraid, that my rollator's not going to go. It did. It went in, it swallowed it, and you could give it more if you want. And of course, the trunk shell, we've talked about this because you drove a Grand Touring about a couple of years, 2-3 years ago, and I did a short little around the parking lot of Oakbrook Mall in a Grand Touring as well.
Which isn't much of a test.
No, it's not. But what we did this time around is we really took it out on the countryside. And I'll tell you what, if you're in the market for a Lucid Air, take a look at it. It's a really wonderful car.
Yeah, the Pure that you drove is their entry-level trim.
Yep.
Which is the most affordable. You don't have the option to get the glass roof, but like you mentioned, you got the rear motor. If you want that all-wheel drive, the dual motor, the Touring that I drove, and you have the option for the glass roof, that isn't a whole lot more, relatively speaking. So when you jump to the Grand Touring, then there's kind of a bit of a price jump. But no, they're great cars. I know our audience may not be fans of electric vehicles, but the technology is really impressive in how they're able to make the motors so compact and put out so much power in an efficient way to give you a lot of range. It's probably one of the range-topping vehicles out there right now. So it's really impressive.
All right, George, let's talk about one of those vehicles you took on the autocross that really impressed you.
Yeah, what really impressed me was that Mini Cooper, John Cooper Works Hardtop that was on autocross, that ironically, they have a drive mode called go-kart mode. Well, heck, we're on a go-kart track, put that thing in go-kart mode, give that thing a spin around. It was a hoot because it was so lively and responsive, and it was really fun to drive. It may not feel like it felt like it was going fast. And I don't know from a time standpoint how it compared to the other vehicles. I wish they would release the times that we all clocked in, but it really did a nice job of handling the curves, putting the power down when you ask it to, and really made for an engaging driving experience. So I really enjoyed it.
Well, I remember back when they rebooted Mini and they brought it to the United States finally, that you really didn't need a go-kart mode because it drove like a go-kart anyway. And we're not just talking about a Cooper S, we're talking just a Cooper. And now we have much more powerful Mini Cooper lineup. And the hardtops still are relevant because you can get a Countryman and never get that same feeling of go-kartness that Mini has always had, even before the reboot by BMW.
True.
Yes. So I'm glad you finally got that's your first Mini.
That's true. I'm ashamed to say, that's my first drive in a Mini.
Oh, that is just wonderful. So happy for you.
I'm glad I had a chance to try it.
Exactly.
Fun car.
Yeah, fun car indeed. I wish I had my hands on that. But anyway, speaking of BMW.
Yeah, we had a whole new vehicle show up that we had a chance to take a look at, and I test drove, and that was the 2025 BMW M5 Touring, which is the kind of the wagon version of the M5. They had it there in a pretty menacing looking matte black finish and with all the options and bells and whistles, and it really looked sharp and impressive. And we do have a short of that, which we'll link up in the description, but the sound was excellent. It's got that big V8 turbocharged motor in there, and it really, it had summer tires on there, and it was very rainy on the day that we had it, and it was a little squirrely to put the power down, but it kept it under control, but it kept it entertaining as well. But it was a lot of fun.
Don't they have like a wet setting?
They may. I don't think I had it in the wet setting. That might be partly my fault, but I had it on the fun setting, so I made sure to make the drive modes be the performance modes when I get into them, be it the Nuremberg mode or the go-kart mode or whatever, to get the most out of the vehicles.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, when you get into the cars that advertise that they're a go-fast car, they promise performance, you want to get it to its best setting. Sometimes it will bite you, but sometimes it will be rewarding.
Yes, and we'll talk about how so a little bit later.
Absolutely.
All right, so Moving on, we'll talk about an update to our long-term vehicle fleet that we own and maintain. First, the 2019 Volkswagen Golf R. Now, this is reaching a milestone in that it's reaching its 6 years of age. It's got the 6-year, 72,000-mile warranty on it that Volkswagen offered at the time. In fact, its build date birthday is tomorrow, June 2nd, was when it was born from the factory.
As of time of recording.
Yes. So I do like to celebrate the build dates of the vehicles, so that's kind of fun. It was purchased in September of 19, so it was a couple months until it traversed the seas to make it to the dealership for pickup. But anyhow, it did need some things like the rear brakes. The pads were getting a little thin, so we brought it in to have it serviced to replace the rear brakes. It was also due for a brake fluid flush, so that was an opportune time to get that done as well as some of the recalls. Now, there was 2 recalls on that. I opted to do, there was one on the braking system in which some of the electronics and programming around that had to be updated. There's a second one involving the trim around the drive select shifter that it can peel some of the metal flaking off and cut you. But mine is not doing that. I've seen pictures online where people have been horribly cut from that. When it flakes up, it just creates a sharp edge. But mine's good. So I'm going to say, I'm going to hold off on that until it does flake up. So if it does flake up, I'll get it fixed then. Also had them to replace the cabin air filter, and it's pretty much an easy job, but for whatever reason, both this one, the 19, and the 2016 version, getting the glove box down and behind it, for some reason stymies me, and I just can't get it off to remove. So I asked the dealership to do that for me. Provided the filter, and they were glad to do that. And the filters look something like this. This is what a cabin filter, brand new one, looks like. So nice and clean. This has got some gray texture to it. And this is what came out of it. A little icky. So, granted, I was a little tardy with getting this done, so this is like 6 years worth of gunk. This is the first time it was done, which I'm ashamed to say. So I usually try to stay on top of that, but just because of how tricky it is in getting the glove box off, caused a little bit of delay in that regard. So, but now it's breathing properly with a fresh air filter. So we got that done. Also, had them check for any leaks and areas that need to be addressed. And one weak spot on the vehicle is the water pump. And they did notice some weeping from the water pump. Common issue with the vehicle. And they replaced the water pump under warranty without any issues. They had the parts on hand, so it was a quick repair in that regard, which is nice. Some things that also need to be looked at, it's kind of an adjustment thing, as when you get a new vehicle, sometimes you need some things adjusted, like how the doors fit on the body. And on the driver's door, I noticed that sometimes I would get a little bit of air leakage and kind of a whistle sound in a crosswind in the wintertime. And also when I wash the car in the driveway by hand, of course, the driveway has a bit of incline to it. So water would get in through the door and would collect on the inside of the door on top of the rubber gasket for the door. And not quite sure why, but I know it shouldn't be there. So I asked them to take a look at that. They did make adjustments to the door, so hopefully that's going to do it. I've yet to wash it to see if it really did do that. They didn't test to reproduce the leak because they thought they had to take the car through their car wash, which I had a sign in the car that says, "Do not wash." I think they misunderstood that as they didn't want the car to get wet, which I'm a little confused about this, because my concern was I didn't want the rotating brushes to scratch the clear coat finish. So that's why I wash it by hand or go through a touchless car wash. So they weren't able to put water on to test that out. But we'll see if the door adjustment made a difference or not. I'm hoping that's all it is. There's still time on the warranty anyway, so I can always bring it back if need be. One thing I did discover when I picked up the vehicle was the dash cams were unplugged. So I don't know if, looking at the footage, it appears that they brought the vehicle out from inside of the shop, and they were great about keeping it inside the shop to keep the amount of dirt and dust from nearby construction from getting on it. But as soon as they got outside onto their lot, they disconnected the cameras. So I don't know if they want evidence of their hooning with it or what they did with it. That was a little disappointing in seeing that. But anyhow, so got that back and drove that recently, and it's been good so far. So also had the oil change done on it because that was long overdue. As you recall, I had lots of oil on the shelf. So finally got that done. Because it was just before the warranty, there wasn't too many miles on that oil, but needless to say, it was an opportune time to do another oil analysis on it. So just to make sure that everything was good. The oil analysis looked great, they said, and they saw no fuel dilution in the oil. No insolubles from like a bad air filter for the engine, nothing like that. They think everything is looking good and doing well. So we'll put a screenshot of the oil analysis. And the oil analysis is kind of like, I liken it to like when you go get a physical and you get a blood test. They bring your blood into the labs and you look at all the different things for, cholesterol and all the different things. It's really kind of the same thing, a health check for your engine, and I like to get those done periodically. You just have to grab a little sample, which is kind of like a sample when you go into the doctor, except you don't have to pee in it. You just need to kind of get a little bit into this vial. And I apologize for the podcast listeners. It's got a white vial that comes with the kit that you use to send your sample, and you have a nice shipping container that will securely send it through the mail without it leaking. But you can get those online, and they're really worthwhile because it tells you a lot about what's going on with your engine, if it's giving unusual wear, if you've got metal particulates floating around in there, all that kind of stuff. So I really like doing that. So with that, hopefully that's going to hold it for the Golf R. Things that needed to be done. So it's pretty much current on that. So big update on the Golf R.
Absolutely. It was due. It was definitely due. Yeah.
And if you don't drive it that much, still time plays a factor in maintenance because your brake fluid, the issue with that is moisture getting into the fluid, and you need to get that out every once in a while. So depending on what your recommended intervals are from your manufacturer, I think it's 3 years for this Golf. So it was overdue on that too. So I needed to get that. Moving on, the Mazda CX-5, the V&R machine 2021. Took that to the Mama Rally and back. So racked up a lot of miles with that. Switched from the winter tires to the summer tires. Of course, did the same thing on the Golf. And it's been running great. So no issues with that. Really nothing new to report on that one.
No damage like in years past.
No. Well, we did get a little scraping that we saw in the front corner, but not bad. So yeah. It's not like a broken windshield. So that was kind of a bummer. So talking about the CJ7, the 1976 CJ7, took that out of storage. And we had a beautiful day yesterday that took it out and brought it to a car show that highlighted vintage style of vehicles. And it really fit into the crowd there for the variety of vintage because they had everything going back to the 1940s all the way up to modern day. But with the 1976 vehicle, people looked at it and they really appreciated it. Certainly there were some people that it really resonated with, which was really, really cool to see. And the story behind it, when people heard the story, they just appreciated it more, I think.
I think so too. I love hearing people talk about the CJ and said, I used to have one. I learned how to drive on one, which in some places you don't hear as much as in others, but it was not surprising to hear that from especially one of the people who are on the board of the car club that hosted the event.
Yes, he really appreciated it.
Indeed, indeed. And there were other people that were curious about it too. They said, "Oh my God, we haven't seen an original Survivor class Jeep CJ7. You don't see those often. Everything of that vintage has been modified and lifted and big tires and go off-road or off the trail.
The tub's been restored, or a lot of the original parts are gone because they've been long replaced. But this has got all the original parts.
Absolutely. And maybe when you take it to the next show, we might tell you where that next show is so you can actually see it live and in person.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Now, bringing it to the show was interesting. Now, it's something that broke last year sometime was the fuel gauge. Brought it out of storage, and I had a little bit of fuel in a can that I added to the vehicle and went down the road a little ways to the car wash, and it was one of those car washes that was either touch or touchless, and of course, touchless. And it moves back and forth when you're in the car wash, and then you drive out and you have the dryer. Well, midway through the car wash, the vehicle stopped. The engine clunked out. It's like, oh no, what's going on? Tried to start it during the wash and it never started. It didn't even give an inkling of wanting to turn over. And it's like, oh boy. All right. So 2 cars are behind me and it's like, I got to get this thing out of the car wash. So I get out, get behind the vehicle. I rock it back and forth so it gets over that little thing that you park on when it tells you, that's how you know whether you're in the right spot. Push it out of the car wash, pushing it past the dryers. So the dryers are blowing on me as I push it out. So sure enough, I ran out of fuel and I had a little bit in the gas can and brought the gas can to the fuel pump and added some fuel in there and brought it to the vehicle and got it started and got it running, drove it up to the fuel pumps and properly put fuel in it. So that was an experience. It just used more fuel than I thought. It didn't have as much in the tank that I thought.
More like an adventure.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what Jeeps are about? An adventure?
True.
Well, not pushing them, but it was fun nonetheless. I just need to get that fuel gauge fixed so I don't have to worry about running out of fuel and pushing the vehicle to a safe spot.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah. Anyway, so because the Golf was worked on, as we mentioned earlier, we had a loaner vehicle. So it's not a situation of like rental car roulette where you don't know what you're going to get, but you're offered options. We weren't really offered options, but what we did get was a very useful and interesting vehicle because it was something that I know that you were curious in, and that was the 2025 Volkswagen Jetta SE.
Yeah, I'm glad we got that SE. I was curious about it because over the last few years, every Jetta we got was a GLI. Great vehicle. It's got performance of a GTI. It's got great driving manners and whatnot. It's a great, wonderful vehicle, but not everyone buys a GLI. And since sales of Jettas have been just absolutely great for Volkswagen, they normally would buy an SE or an SEL or a Sport. So something that's less expensive. And this thing's a great value.
And I've encountered SEs like in rental cars because it's very popular in rental car fleets too.
Yep. It's a big fleet vehicle. And it's also a good value when the loaner cars become, certified pre-owned on lots.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on the Jetta SE?
I like them because they really do a good job of providing performance with efficiency. So I know we've heard that with the whole diesel thing, but in this case, it's of course the gas motor, the 1.5 liter turbo, gives you plenty of power, but also gives you plenty of gas efficiency. And it gives you that German engineering feel, and it's comfortable. I really enjoy them.
And I will go back to the word value because the sticker price on that is incredible. It's well under $30,000 actually, which nowadays a car in its class, I mean, if you see something over 30, then you should be buying it. So this is what, about 27, 28,000 for this one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on top of that, it still feels like a Jetta. It's comfortable, it's roomy, has a big trunk for the class. I mean, you can't go wrong with one.
Yeah, the screen size for the infotainment was reasonable. You had still the wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You didn't get the big fancy instrument cluster screen, but for what they have, it's fine. It's more than sufficient.
More than just the necessities. You get more than enough to be able to make your commute right. And it returns really great fuel economy on top of all that.
Now let's talk about some of the other vehicles that we've worked with in the last quarter.
Absolutely. I'm going to talk about the car I took to the Mama Spring Rally while I was hours ahead of you in the CX-5. I was driving a 2025 Lexus RX 500h F Sport Performance. Now, that alone is a mouthful, but let me break that down. This is probably the third RX of this generation I've driven, and I've lost count on how many RXs I've driven total since my first one in 2012. And that's going 3 generations of RXs and going through mid-cycle refreshes and whatnot. Now, the reason why this is the F Sport Performance is because they put in their more powerful hybrid in this particular version. So you have a 2.4 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, which is the standard engine for the RX 350. But they add the electric motor. So this driveline is familiar because it appears on some Crown models like the Crown Platinum. But in this application, it's supposed to be ratcheted up to be performance. I believe horsepower figures is around 366 combined as a net. Now, considering the mileage we had to take it on, I had no fatigue problems. Those red leather seats are very supportive. They're actually reasonably comfortable. I had a very nice drive. It always happens with every RX I've driven is I can recall about maybe 4 RXs. As a matter of fact, this is the last 4 RXs. I took it on a very lengthy drive. But this one, I took the Elkhart Lake and it did the job. Returned 23 miles per gallon, which isn't great, but it's reasonable for this particular driveline. That's all I've been seeing is that particular 23 to 25 miles per gallon with that turbocharged hybrid. There's always something about the RX that I appreciate. The size, the practicality.
Now, also, we had an interesting vehicle. We had another Raptor.
Yeah, our favorite word from Ford.
Right. So we had the Ford Ranger Raptor this time around. Although it was a 2024, it provided a good sample of what the current generation of the Ranger Raptor is like. So got that EcoBoost 3-liter V6 in that, which gives you that extra power with the twin turbo V6. And it wasn't bad. I think provided a good flavor of what the Raptor is all about in that Ranger package. And it's a nice size of a vehicle. So you don't have the full size like the F-150 in the Raptor of that, which is a much more expensive vehicle. The cost, I think, is the big news with the Ranger Raptor being, like $60K. And that's a big advantage, I think.
The performance level, it's there. I mean, compared to, say, the Bronco Raptor actually has the same engine, same driveline, a little bit more horsepower. But it's also, compared to the Ranger Raptor, it's a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
It's a much more concentrated, off-road ready vehicle, what the Bronco is. So because we've already had 2 Bronco Raptors. We had an F-150 Raptor. We had, matter of fact, 3 total from 2 generations. And then the Raptor R with the supercharged V8. I mean, we know our way around these things. The Ranger Raptor, I believe, should be a vehicle. If you're looking at a Ranger, you don't want to look at GM or Toyota or Nissan or even Honda. If you want a midsize pickup truck, with a lot of chutzpah, a lot of oomph, a lot of fun, yeah, check out the Ranger Raptor.
Yeah, absolutely, because you're getting all those performance bits that you would have to add later if you're going to modify a lower trim vehicle to be something similar. And even still, you may not accomplish what they've accomplished in that trim.
Absolutely. And you get to see all the additional assets they put in there, such as the Fox shocks and of course the off-road tires, the all-terrain tires. That is a really wonderful complete package at a very reasonable price. This thing actually was priced less than the Tacoma TRD Pro that we reviewed and gave a Voti 2024 on.
Amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, there's another Ford that we worked with that bears mention.
Absolutely. So back in 2022, we awarded this Ford F-150 Lightning Voti 2022. Now, it took a while for a victory lap because we like to get that in within a reasonable amount of time. But I was surprised to get one because I believe it replaced something else that was on the schedule from that fleet provider. However, this one is very interesting. It is called the Flash. Now, there are 5 trim levels on the F-150 Lightning. The Flash is in the middle because it starts from the commercial customer version, which is the Pro, all the way up to the Platinum. We drove the Platinum the first time we had an F-150 Lightning. So the Flash, it may feel like a work truck because the seats are of this synthetic material, sort of a synthetic cloth-ish. Can't describe what it's called, but it feels all right. But it's also a good next up from entry-level vehicle for people to get into pricing-wise. It's not as bad as, say, other electric pickup trucks that I shall not mention on this podcast. And also, it's a useful pickup truck because as we speak, it's the only body on frame electric pickup truck that's out there right now. And recently I drove another electric pickup truck from another manufacturer. And there's something about the F-150 because it just seems so familiar. I mean, the instrument cluster is a familiar one. Infotainment system's a little bit on a larger screen that you don't find on regular F-150s, but it works fantastically, my humble opinion. It's still comfortable. It still feels like an F-150. But again, you have 2 electric motors. You have a big battery pack. So the reason why you want to look at Flash versus XLT is that it comes standard with the extended range battery pack. So should give you a little bit better range overall. I mean, they're talking around 300.
Yeah. And that's one thing that really impressed me with the Lightning is how accessible that power is with all the power outlets around the vehicle, the 220 and how much power is behind that because we ran a welder off of it and all kinds of crazy things. So it's just the possibilities of what you can do with the truck is impressive.
And the Pro Power on board, the one that we experienced in the video that you should watch right up there, the one that won the Voti 2022, that same Pro Power on board is available on the Flash that we had. And if I'm not mistaken, that is standard equipment or maybe available option, but having that on board is great, especially at a lower price point than the Platinum. Now, there is a twist to this whole story.
Oh?
In fact, as the time of this recording, the next day, we'll be receiving another one.
Another one?
Another one. Yes. I don't know why. We're going to get another one.
But this will be a 2025 versus a 2024.
Correct. It'll be a 2025, which is the same trim level. It's a Flash.
But different color.
Yeah, a completely different color.
We'll see what we can glean from this 25 model that we may not have noticed in the 24 model. And so moving on, we have a guest that we have an interview with. Her name is Robbi Correll, and very much an automotive enthusiast. And Randy, talk a little bit more about her.
So I met Robbi several years ago in Fargo, North Dakota at a Cars and Coffee they had while I was out there for some work in the write-ups. I love the fact that her taste in automobiles are completely different than a lot of people's. So I want you to hear her story. First of all, we're so glad that we have a guest here on our podcast. And all I know about her is 3 letters, JDM. But we're going to talk more about that because this is a fellow automotive enthusiast here in the Twin Cities, and her name is Robbi Correll. Robbi, welcome.
Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for including me in your craziness.
Well, absolutely. You're right. It is craziness. Let's get right to it because I know of you as an automotive enthusiast. So, Robbi, tell us more about yourself.
Well, I'm Robbi Correll, also known as Trans Car Girl on a lot of social media. I have an Instagram and a YouTube, but no videos as of yet. But it was more or less to just lock down that name. I'm also known as the Skyline Queen and the aunt of the MN Skyline Group. You'll know why here shortly. But I just tend to go to all the car shows and enjoy myself. But the real reason why I got into cars is, of course, from family, from my dad. You know, my dad's dad. They always got new cars, would debadge them, you know, clean them up, make them their own, but they didn't really do anything with performance mods. But I did, you know, cliche, see Fast and the Furious, and that got me into Japanese cars and modifying cars. First couple, didn't really do a lot with the power mods. It was more or less stereo and neon lighting. Go through a lot of tubes on a low car. So I'm glad they went with LEDs nowadays. But true passion for Japanese cars didn't really actually happen until I went to college and started watching anime, where I found at the time a very low-known anime called Initial D. And then it blew up from there.
And that basically your first attraction to JDM as well is through those two.
Yeah.
Not just Initial D, but also Fast and Furious.
That is correct, yeah.
Yeah. Now, eventually, you get out from your XB to your first JDM. And please tell us what that... We've been alluding to this and to getting to this point. So talk about that first JDM.
Well, I've always wanted a Skyline, but I wasn't going to drop 25 grand on some import company that I had no knowledge of how the process worked or if I'm actually going to get a car. So I decided to take my chance on a very inexpensive K car for $5,000. And at the time it was like, okay, this is going to work out. I got the car. I was ecstatic. And a bunch of modifications later, and it still hasn't ended. Everybody knows me for Ms. Kitty, the 1989 Suzuki Alto Works. Bright pink, Hello Kitty, Atasha, lots of plushies on the inside.
It's a favorite, I think, at car shows because you bring it to like the Minneapolis car show last year.
Yeah, I did take it to the auto show to, promote another event. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but I do go to a lot of charity events. I go to a lot of car shows in that car. I even have a big Hello Kitty mascot outfit that I wear, and kids love it. And not just kids, but adults. Not just women, a lot of men too. So it's a lot of fun.
It is a fun car.
It is a very fun car, and the Suzuki Alto Works. For those of us who are unfamiliar with Suzuki and the Alto specifically, please tell us a little bit of the specs on this thing.
Well, the Suzuki Alto Works is a top-tier K car from Japan, K being micro car, so it has to fit in a box. Very small requirements, so 5 feet wide, no more than 10.5 feet long. Can't be a certain height. And the biggest caveats for being in a K car class are under 550 cc for that generation of vehicle. Later in 1990 or 91, they changed it to 660 cc. And you could not produce more than 63 horsepower to the wheels.
Wow.
And Ms. Kitty is the top tier because she is a dual overhead cam turbo model.
Wow.
Which puts out 63 horse.
No, dynoed at 58, sadly.
Ah,
But that was before the very extensive and expensive engine out service, which happens with a lot of older Japanese cars.
now from that Alto Works comes this collection, which
Yeah.
blows my mind to this day, because you didn't stop with that Alto.
No, I did not. Because of Initial D, my dream car was a 92, 93 Nissan Skyline GTR black V-Spec, but I couldn't afford it at the time. So I decided to get a lesser known and even rarer spec, in mine and many others people's opinions, is a 92 Nissan Skyline Autech version. So the Autech version is one of 200 cars that has the RB26 neutered, as in no turbos, but it still has the all-wheel drive, has the rear-wheel steer, Hikis, and Ateza. So it's a very unique and interestingly spec'd car. But at the time, nobody knew what it was. Nobody really wanted them. So I was able to score a really good deal on this car.
And it didn't stop there.
No, years later, I really, really wanted to get myself an R30. And unfortunately, at the time, again, I didn't have the funds, couldn't even find the specific car or the spec I wanted. So I kind of settled on probably one of my favorite Skylines now. It's an R31 1987 model GTS-R. And the GTS-R is the Group A homologation build that Nissan did so they could race them. They only made 823 of them.
Now, you did finally get an R30.
Yes. Interestingly enough, the company that I imported the 31 through, they knew I was looking for a 30. They had their eye on a 30. And they finally got the original owner in Japan, and this is a one-owner car from Japan, to actually sell it to the import company, and I scooped it up before anybody ever knew it was available. It is a 1984 Zenki R30 RSX-C. It is the tippity top of the R30 generation. It is a very interestingly built twin cam 4-cylinder, which is odd, FJ20 with a turbo and the intercooler.
And that's been a hit lately, because every time I would go to a car meet, when the Alto's not there, the R30 shows up, and that's been drawing a huge crowd to it.
Yeah, it's because it was uniquely modified to look like the silhouette cars of the day, the big boxy race cars that they did with the big wings. Luckily, it doesn't have that nasty big wing, in my opinion. But it is very uniquely built. And the previous owner, from my understanding, when he couldn't find a factory part, he would modify it or find an aftermarket part. And it turned into a Seibu Kaisatsu homage car. And that was a 1980s cop drama on Japanese TV.
Now, here's the thing. Even though you love Japanese cars, not everything in your collection is strictly JDM, because you also have a very nice Miata.
Yes. My grandfather bought a 99 Mazda Miata, brand new from the factory, fully spec'd out. Sold it to my dad after 10 years of ownership, and my dad sold it to me after 10 years of ownership. So I got it. It had a lot of issues because it just never got to be driven as much as it should have been. But after some tasteful mods, mostly suspension and some little tweaks here and there, I was able to actually get it out on the track, and it's a very capable car. But I will say, a lot of people say, oh, you need power, you need to go fast. Honestly, it's a lot more fun to drive a slow car fast.
Sure. And also acquiring a vehicle that's been passed down through the family is really almost ideal because you really kind of know what the history of the vehicle is.
Yeah, I honestly consider it an heirloom, and I hope that I can keep it long enough to pass it on to, someone else in the family.
That's great.
That's fantastic. So this fleet, we've seen it, part of it, in so many different places, and it's so great. And as you mentioned before, you're with MN Skyline.
Yep.
And therefore you have a toe, if not a full foot, in the whole car community here in Twin Cities and beyond. Considering the collection that you have, I'm sure there are vehicles out there that you would love to get your hands on.
That is true. Everyone, that knows Skylines, they always want a 32, a 33, or a 34 generation. The 34s are outrageously priced right now. If you really want a GTR or a high tier vehicle, but you can get them fairly inexpensive and fairly cheap if you go with a 4-door or an automatic vehicle in the Skylines. But I will admit that the older Skylines really do touch me in a specific way. So I would love to get my hands on, a Hako or a Ken Mary, but they're once again overpriced. There's a lesser known generation, the C210, which came between the Ken Mary and the R30 series, that are fairly still inexpensive. If you can find a, decent one that's not too untastefully modified or rusty, because these cars were sadly made with inferior, metals, and they do tend to rust pretty easily.
So the analytical mechanic person in me is curious to know, what is your regimen for maintaining all these vehicles, especially with the challenge being in Minnesota? You need to store a lot of these vehicles away in the winter months. So I'm curious to know, what do you do to keep these things running?
Well, for all of you JDM fans out there that want to spend a lot of money on a car or a series of cars, be fair warned, these older cars do take a lot of maintenance. And if you're not mechanically inclined or somewhat lazy like I am, it's going to be expensive. And the other issue there is some of these cars, if you buy them at auction or they came from Japan, if you don't have records showing that they've been maintained in the last few years, it more than likely was sat in a storage yard, out in the elements, just not running. So usually when a car comes in my possession, all the fluids get changed out. Spark plugs, air filter, tires if they need them. Most of the time they do. And, as long as you drive the vehicles, and I kind of try my best to rotate, the vehicles per show. So everybody gets out and everybody gets an X amount of kilometers each year, but it's not easy. And for most of it, I, could do it myself, and I could do that at home, but my garage is not really set up for all of that.
Sure.
However, we do have resources locally here in the Twin Cities that could help us out.
Oh, yeah. Can I do a shout out?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I do all of my major repairs and minor maintenance over at JWP Automotive.
Yo, John Wayne, pay us some money here. We need some sponsorship.
I keep hearing good things about that shop. So, yeah.
We almost took the CX-5 to it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
And it will probably end up there. So
Eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, and they don't just work on the obscure, interesting JDMs. They work on a lot of American muscle, and they actually did a bunch of regular maintenance on my pickup truck as well.
Oh, cool.
nice.
This is all awesome, Robbi. I've been wanting to interview you as well. And I'm so glad we brought you on our podcast here. Thank you for being here. We're so glad. Shout out your socials if you would.
Well, Randy, George, thank you so much for having me here on the podcast. Been watching some of the previous ones, and really, you know what? I'm glad I could be a part of this. But once again, I am Robbi Correll. I have an Instagram account, which is trans_cargirl. I also have a YouTube account under the same name, with some videos to come, hopefully.
That's great. We'll look forward to those.
And I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much, Robbi.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you, Robbi, for joining us here on the Victory and Reseda podcast. This is episode 10. So glad you were able to listen or watch us. Subscribe to this podcast on using your favorite podcast app so you can listen back on your automobile or your phone with your earbuds or whatnot. You can always do a search, Victory and Reseda, when you're searching for our podcast, and this episode should pop up. Or you could also listen to the previous 9 episodes while you're just driving along in your car. Now, you can also watch all of our videos on YouTube. Just look for Victory and Reseda, and we have all of our reviews. We have shorts. We have other features as well. Check us out on YouTube. And while you're on YouTube, don't forget to click like, subscribe, and click on the notification bell so you can find out what our next video is going to be. And it could be a review, could be a short, could be something completely different. But keep on watching our stuff on YouTube. Now, Victory Reseda was born as a website. And this was 14 years ago when we rebranded a blog to promote some of my other work to a completely automotive-focused website with reviews, history, commentary about the industry, you name it, we write about it. And if it just has to do with the car or sometimes with travel that's centered around the car or other forms of transportation. Now that I bore you, just click on the victoryandreseda.net and read all of our great material.
Your historiographies are really impressive. So if you're into the history of vehicles, certainly do a search in the upper right corner on the Victory and Reseda website. And chances are you'll find an interesting history that Randy's put together on those. So be sure to look at that. Also, we do have a merchandise shop that you can find on Victory and Reseda, all spelled out, .etsy.com. There you'll find Victory and Reseda stickers, much like you see on Randy's laptop there, that you can affix to your car in 3 different grades. We also still, I think, have some hats and t-shirts and a hoodie left. So we hope to perhaps expand some offerings in the future, but that's what we have there now. Well, with that, we'll call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening, episode 10. And we hope that you'll catch us again through all of our various outlets. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
So long, everybody.